On this edition of the Wizards Talk podcast, we check in with a special one, a real one, OG, Caron Butler, an NBA champion, two-time All-Star, spent 5 years with our Wizards and does our broadcast for NBC Sports Washington. Juice, we got a lot to get to. I appreciate you spending some time with me. I know it's early morning out there on the West Coast, so appreciate you getting up with me.
Hey, ain't no problem, OG. Look, I'm always up early anyway, man. The father of four kids in the house still. My daughter, my youngest child is a diabetic, so it was my duty to be up all night this time. So no problem, brother.
My guy, I appreciate it. Let's get it. Let's get it to what's going on in the world today. I was so happy to see this past weekend you out there marching for the cause. You have been so proactive in a lot of social issues, even as a player. I want you to tell me, from your perspective, why this time it's different.
Uh, I think, well, the optics you can easily look at and just see that over all 50 states has showed up and marched behind this movement and over 20 countries. So it's a different energy and momentum, to this. And, this is something that, like you said, I've been active in this space for quite some time, with uh, judicial reform, mass incarceration, immigration reform, all these spaces. And now that, I've pivoted into another, phase of my life, I serve on the board for the Vera Institute. And my position is to, try to drive real change. And now that we have the resources and things behind us, it's paramount that we be in front of this thing. So, that has always been, a huge part of my second act, to change the narrative and create a new narrative, one that it evolves, involves equality. And that's what it's been. That's what it's been for me, and it means a little bit more, coming from the South. My family, Columbus, Mississippi. My grandmother worked on the cotton fields. She marched in the civil rights movement. Uh, Growing up in Wisconsin, predominantly white, and being just 7 to 8% of the population, it was very important for me to get out there with my descendants, my kids, and let them be a part of this movement and this history and this new narrative.
I appreciate what you said about your second act because you have done something that um, is very important. You have been very out front about what you went through as a youngster, and that did not define you. What has defined you is what Caron Butler looks like today, as you said, a father of four, and being able to get out into the streets and activate people that normally probably wouldn't have been activated if it wasn't for the visual, as you said, of George Floyd. During those protests, though, I'm interested to know what it looked like from your perspective in terms of the people that were marching along with
You know, that's a great question, and I would tell you this, that the young people that showed up was just so powerful, because what has happened in the past is we have had like a mixture of generations. We have our era that's freshly educated and informed, and trying to do our part and trying to make sure that we lead properly. But the young people are just, they're re-energized, and they have that surge and that boost of energy, and most importantly, they're thirsty to get informed. So what it looked like was you had 3-4 generations out there. But the craziest thing, and I've seen this with all the marches, like you think about Birmingham, and the monument when Dr. Martin Luther King, "I Have a Dream" speech, and all those things, and you look at history, you've never seen it across 50 states like this, and also across 18 countries. This is a global surge and a global movement. But this is the thing. It was more white people on the front lines and out there, and I've seen it here, even in Los Angeles, than just black and brown community. And that was the impressive thing. when you talking about, and my kids go to Catholic school, when you're talking about protesting being done, otherwise you can be expelled. This is in the clause already. They was protesting at Catholic schools. They was protesting in front of malls. They was protesting in the busiest intersections in California. And the people wasn't black and brown. That's what the huge difference was. Like, Chris, it felt different. It's like just the energy of everything just felt a lot different. It was unity. It was pure unity out there. And I was next to one individual where we got on Vine in Hollywood, and the brother literally just ripped his shirt off. Like it was just an energy, like, I'm just letting this off me. And it was powerful, and I felt it, you know what I mean? And, I while I was marching, I even dropped tears, bro, because it was just moving. It was an energy.
We're with Caron Butler here on the Wizards Talk podcast. We'll get to the NBA stuff in a moment, but I find it extremely important because I'm with a brother that is been on the front lines, if you will, of social change. Caron, I need your help on something. The last couple of weeks has been hard for me. It's been hard for a lot of Black people, right? We kind of have PTSD when it comes to police brutality. And when I saw the video of George Floyd for the first time, brother, it made me sick to my stomach. And I cried. And I was asking myself when I was crying, literally, why is this different? I just saw a documentary on Netflix a couple of nights ago called LA 92, and it was dealing with the riots in LA after the Rodney King trial. And I remember I was in college at the time. And the first time that I saw it, Juice, the Rodney King beating, I saw it on the news, and I literally thought it was a movie because my mind had never seen like that. I saw the video of the civil rights movement in the 60s of police brutality, but I never saw that, right? So at the time, I thought it was a movie, and it was hard for me to wrap my mind around it. This George Floyd one reminded me of that, but I'm now in my mid-40s, and it wasn't a movie to me. It was real. What was it like for you when you saw that video for the first time?
Bro, I echo everything you just said. It was trauma. I saw myself. I've had numerous run-ins with the law, and the first thing I said is that could have easily been me. That could have easily been my brother. That could have easily been my uncle. And I identified and resonated with that whole experience immediately. And by the grace of God and, by generations of prayer, I was covered in my situations, and my family was covered. But this was something that was a complete murder and overkill that the world had witnessed, and justice needed to be expedited. And it's just unfortunate. But the one thing I did do, because I always talk about the who, the what, the when, and the why in this household with my children, I made sure that I know, even though it was a sense of trauma, I let them watch it. I let them watch the news. I let them see what was happening. I let them see the double standard, and I educated them, because I cannot shield my kids from the reality of the world, because one day they will not be up under my roof, and they will be out there, and I don't want the shock value to completely just take them and put them in a dark place. I expose them to everything, so they're well educated and well rounded. So that was just the toughest thing for me, always educating them, always talking to them about, whether it's the history of our country, 1619, celebrate Juneteenth Day, the Willie Lynch letter, old Jim Crow, new Jim Crow, civil rights movement, mass incarceration, redlining, environmental racism, everything. And then all of a sudden getting to this point where I'm like, okay, it was a difficult conversation, but they understood it. And I was just proud of myself and my wife for continuing to pour into them, and they was prepared for all of this. If that make any sense, like they was
Yes.
prepared for something tragic and how to deal with it.
How many times have you had the talk with your son? And you know what the talk is.
all the time. I always talk to him. Ever since he known about Yo Gabba Gabba and Barney and Blues Clues, we've been talking about in a black man in America. Like seriously, like if he was old enough to understand that, I had the conversation with him. If you ever get pulled over, at 5 years old, like, and it's crazy because here I am, first generational riches, and I remember being on Lakefront Drive in Racine, Wisconsin, and I'm in a Bentley coupe or something, and I'm pulling over by the lake, and I'm putting my hands and showing my son, like, this is what you do when you pull it over. You know what I mean? Like, just explaining that to him at the age of 6 or 7, and it was just crazy. And like when now 20, we're marching together, and he's just, he remember all that stuff. You know what I mean? He never forgot that, and he shared that with his siblings. So it's crazy. It's unfortunate, but at the same time, it's the world that we still live in.
I have had those conversations with my two boys. My oldest is 26, grown, living on his own. We've had that conversation. And my 18-year-old that's about to go off to college. We had that conversation as recently as 2 Sundays ago, where it got emotional. And he's heard the talk before. But the one thing, Caron, that angers me is the fact that I'm having these conversations with my son verbatim of the same way that my parents talked to me about what to do when you get pulled over. Okay. So that was, 30 years ago, having that conversation, listening to my parents say, do this, don't do that. And literally I'm saying word for word to my son, the same thing. We got to do better. Caron Butler joining us here on the Wizards Talk podcast. Brother, let's try to transition into some basketball. This bubble thing, explain it to me from your perspective, being a guy that's on the outside but played in the league. Adrian Wojnarowski yesterday reported the fact that between 40 to 50 players have been on this conference call, kind of uncertain about this restart. What's your take on it right now?
I mean, well, it's, I think the NBA collectively trying to, put the players in position and clearly as safe as possible and give them a platform to, play the game of basketball and find a way to finish this season and complete this season. However, this is it's a lot of uncertainty, and it's uncertain time. So players are looking at this situation as, can I really go away for 90 plus days and be, without my loved ones and just be isolated in a bubble and just compete? And you have to look at it's like a lot of components. It's a lot of pieces to the puzzles. You got to look at the financial side of it. Okay, if you're not performing and making money and then revenue can't be made, people will take cuts like the whole world has, been, subjected to this, this pandemic. I think players are looking at it from that optics. Like I talked to a couple players, and they was just really uncertain that they can fully commit to that. So it'd be interesting to see where that leads. But I think that the big picture and the big thing is that people want to play the game of basketball. People want to get back out there on the court. They want to compete. They want to find out, their best against everyone else best to see who ultimately walk away with the title. So that's the beauty of competition. However, I just still think it's a lot of reservations, but I think it still will get done. I think it'll get passed, and I think guys will be participating.
I was joking with your guy Bradley Beal and Ish Smith the last couple of weeks, talking to them about it, and I was like, "Hey, look at it this way. Look at it this way. It'll be like when you played AAU and you walked into the gym. Juice, you remember this, and you got your slides on, you got your socks on, you ready to hoop, and you look at court 2 and you see Bronny over there playing. You look at court 1 and you see Melo and them getting down, and you're like, oh, this is what it used to be like when, listen, we played for the love of the game and we was trying to get to the NBA. Do you kind of see it that way? Will guys like harken back to their AAU days?
I think because we've been isolated and because we've been away from everything for quite so long, everything going forward is going to be like, wait a minute. Like, is that, is this one of those things? Like, you could say, Run to the gas station. Be like, wait a minute. Is the gas pump safe? Is the, it's just, it's everything. So what, Chris, you know how it is, bro. So once they start playing, it's like, I think all those wait a minutes and the hesitation will be gone, and the guys will just be all in.
Go check in. You sure? I don't know. Okay, boss, I'm going in, man. Caron Butler joining us on the Wizards Talk podcast. So, do you still see it as once these guys get back, they need about a month to get back into shape? Are the favorites still the favorites in your eyes?
No, it's wide. That's a great question. It's wide open. I really do feel like it's wide open, and I think that being part of a championship team, being part of winning teams, bro, it's all about timing, continuity, momentum. And I think that the teams that had the most momentum and all those things going in their favor is build up. And that's taken completely out. Everybody is like equal. Like it's an even playing field. So it's a battle of wills. And a team that's dangerous to me is the Houston Rockets. I think that they have they're like anything can happen. Like Russell Westbrook and James Harden can, they can win you a series along by themselves. It's a lot of scary teams. Our Wizards. You look at Portland. You look at teams that have multiple playmakers that can just get it done. It's a lot of scary teams out there. But I will say this: my major concern with the NBA being, speeded up and coming back very soon is that I think it's going to be a lot of injuries. I played in the 2011 season, and it was a lockout, and we started the season roughly about the second week of December. And we literally got the phone call and had 2 weeks to get prepared. Now, guys stay in some type of shape, but like not basketball shape. And when you got the phone call, it was like, we live in 2 weeks. And me playing with Lob City and the Clippers, we was on national television. So, you're going to go a little harder and, that's your bet. Like you got to be at your best. And I just think that hamstrings and, not bumping into, people over the course of the last 4 months, the physical contact, the pounding, all those things are going to, I just think we're going to have some injuries. I hope not, but I just feel like that's the path we're going down.
And then there's this COVID thing. Okay. This is the reason why we're in the position that we're in right now. If you were playing right now, how concerned would it be for you, Tough Juice, to actually go out there and compete and sweat and you're touching other people? Like, would that be a concern, or once you got into the game, you'd just be locked on 94 feet?
Once I got in the game, I'd be locked in. Here's my situation, and I know there's other people out there that's part of the diabetic community. I have a juvenile diabetic, so she's already immune compromised. So I wouldn't feel comfortable being in a setting and then coming back home and God forbid something was passed on to my daughter and now her body can't fight it off the way that I can. You know what I mean? So now I put her in just a terrible situation, immediately critical situation. So I know that people have family members in their household that are diabetics or borderline diabetic and all these situations that have underlying health issues. When you think about what COVID has done to the Black and brown community universally, we've talked about this on pretty much every roundtable. It's become the epicenter of this virus. And because we do have so many underlying health issues, when you look at the NBA and the National Basketball Association, makes up over 80% is Black people that's in this league. So now you got that component of it as well. That's the one no one's talking about, but that was just glaring to me once I saw the numbers. I was like, that's concerning. But the only thing is, without family or essentials, like being in that bubble, for quite some time, and you're just operating in that bubble amongst your peers, that gives me more hope from that observation.
Yeah, just looking at the numbers, though, they are spiking in Florida. MLS, Major League Soccer is going to be down there also. Also, the WNBA is negotiating with the union to have them play a 22-game season down in Florida. So there's just going to be a lot of leagues and people down there. I just want everybody to just continue to do their due diligence on this to try to figure out the safest way to get these leagues back to playing with the mindset in the forefront of being about player safety. Tough Juice, I want to talk a little bit about the Wizards while I got a couple more minutes with you. Man, before this thing happened, Bradley Beal was playing on some ridiculous level. And brother, shout out to you for getting the interview. I told you I loved it that you had John and Brad together, talking about what it's going to look like when those two brothers get back out on the court. I'm more excited than anybody to see them two because I really think they could do some special things next season. What was your biggest takeaway from Brad before the COVID hit?
Uh, just his leadership, watching him, the way that he, I've seen it's different. I'm glad that I get a chance to call the games and be courtside because your observation changes as the layers of your visual is closer and closer. And I know you get a chance to see it in depth in a different way. So when I'm watching courtside and I'm watching the way that he's seeing the game and playing the game, he knows that he can get anywhere from 25 to 50 points on any given night, but he understands the chess part of the game now. He's setting the table and setting the stage night in and night out, and that's real leadership. So when I'm seeing it from that observation, I'm like, yo, he's got to that point where he's an all NBA perennial all-star guy. You know what I mean? And now when you add that with a healthy John Wall coming back, it's gonna be a lot of excitement. And they want to play with each other. They want to be alongside each other. And that was, always one of those things. When you lose, people immediately say, oh, they probably don't want to play together. No, you're losing probably just because you probably don't have the right components and pieces around you for you to be the best version of that duo. But I feel like Tommy Shepard, those guys, the organization, they get it. They understand the urgency. And this is a great time right now for the Wizards with the foundation core pieces in place. Addition to Rui Hachimura, I think he's going to be great going forward. I covered him in college, his work ethic. Mark Few speaks extremely highly on him. So I love the direction that they're going, but I really love the leadership of where Bradley Beal is at mentally.
You were talking about kind of just those two guys together and playing. And you and I have talked about this, off the air, but we know what's really up with those two. We know that there is a brotherhood there. And, I haven't really shared this a lot with people, but when John was going through what he was going through with his mom and when Miss Frances passed away, Brad was the first one there. And this thing, Caron, goes beyond basketball. I mean, everybody looks at basketball through the surface. They want to be entertained. So all they care about is like wins and losses. And what's being lost, I think, a lot when you're this close to players as you and I are, is they're people and they're growing and they're becoming men and they're having kids and things are changing in their lives where it's not just the competition of who's the man, who's playing second fiddle, this my team, this your team. All that stuff to me is BS. I really want to say what I really want to say, but I'll keep it clean here. But they're so much different than what they were 5 years ago. And again, it's with time. And to see both of them now compared to when Brad first got in the league and their first 3-4 years together, it's called evolution, Caron. And I know you've seen it. And you kind of went through the same thing when you were in DC with Gilbert. Everyone was like, uh-oh, just Gilbert and Caron, whatever. Now I see you two together. You're doing podcasts. You're laughing. It's called evolution. It's about growing and developing as men. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And that's why I wanted to insert myself in the midst of everything that was happening with them and just get next to them because I could revisit the moments where I was in the same predicaments. And now, you just touched on it. Me and Gilbert, doing podcasts together. We, communicating. I was just talking to him yesterday. Like, we communicate more now than we ever have when we was teammates, and it's just about evolving and putting the me thing or whatever aside, and just bro, we're just trying to live. We're trying to inspire. We're trying to create these legacies for our kids and build upon that. And I think that when you see situations, as they say, each one reach one, each one teach one. Uh, as an OG now, it's like, if I see something that you can help, you immediately go to it and tell the brothers, like, this was us. We had this type of energy, and it wasn't things that was said or done. It was just it was just that type of energy amongst us in that space. And we just try to educate and inform and make sure that those brothers know that we with them. And when you're on Ben's Chili Bowl, and when you're in a city that you've given so much to, and they accept you with open arms. In DC, it's a sports city, it's a sports town, but they don't accept everyone. DC is not for everyone. And when you get accepted in the fabric of that community, it's important that you roll with it, and you do it the right way, because it's a huge example. It's the nation's capital. It's a place where Chocolate City is it's a powerful place for our Black and brown community, and they need Black men as strong representation for us. And I'm glad that those brothers are leading it the right way and how they went about it. And I see the unity and I see the love, as you stated. Uh, it's special to watch.
A couple more things that'll get you out of here, man. 2020 has been a very difficult year for a lot of us, but for you in particular, man, you've seen a lot of good people leave. Obviously, what happened with Kobe is just still right there in my mental. How are you holding up?
I'm still grieving, yeah, and I think that I'll be doing so for quite some time. I reached out to Vanessa uh, yesterday, the day before, and it was just like, it hit me. It comes in waves still. Uh, Kobe was a huge asset to my life. He was somebody that I always asked for advice, or bounced ideas off him. And um, that void is just it's hard to fill that void. It'll never be filled. And I miss him. I miss Gigi, but I also go harder because our promises that we made to each other about our second acts and being committed to something bigger than ourselves. So that's why I've been working relentlessly. People be like, man, you working like you ain't got no job or something. But it's like, bro, I go hard because I got to inspire, man. I'm 40
Yeah.
years old, man. You get one time at this thing, one crack, and then it's like, all right, it comes in waves. And next thing you know, you moved out the way. So my brother, he always told me, man, CB, now what? So when I do something, that's always my mentality. Now what? Like, what you gonna do now? Now what? You know what I mean? So that was a checkpoint. Stay true to the mission. So that's what I'm doing. I'm staying true to the mission.
My brother, I'll get you out on this one. I want to have some fun with you real quick. So I want to know what your favorite jersey number you wore in the NBA. We've got 4, 1, 3, 5. You were 21 and 31, or 2 and 31? You were
Two,
12. You
30,
you were 2. You
no,
were 3. You were
2 and
4, 1.
31.
Okay. Which one was your favorite number and why?
Number 5 was my favorite number because uh, my 5 children. Uh, that was my last child. So when I got that number, it was representation of the kids, all our kids. And that's what people don't understand. Like, they was like, why you pick your number? Right? It was always because the amount of kids that I had. The only time that I didn't pick a number based on my children were when I first came into the league. I had 4, and I only had 2 kids at the time. But it was Brett Favre, being from Wisconsin, cheesehead, favorite player. uh, I was rocking the number 4. And then all the other times, it was just the number of kids I had, and that's how my numbers start changing.
My man. I'll end on that one. Love you, brother. I appreciate everything that you're doing out in these streets, man. Keep
Yeah, love you
inspiring, bro.
too, man.
Hey, look, I'm older than you, and you got me out here inspired, man. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep rocking out.
I appreciate you, OG. Hey, man, you set the bar, man. You know, I'm trying to make you proud, brother.
Yeah, you doing that for sure. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for listening to this edition of the Wizards Talk podcast.